where Krishna is trying to explain that the lower self is not to be destroyed by self-mortification, but to be united with the higher by being trained to obey the voice of the higher under all circumstances. And that is absolutely all circumstances. That's hard to put to grasp how that enters, but it's a totality. Inner life and the wish for inner life is a totality. There are steps up the ladder, but at a certain point, it has to be total. It has to be a total transformation of everything inside oneself, in every aspect of oneself, not self-improvement about certain aspects as it's often portrayed, but a totality, a complete and total transformation. So the voice of the higher under all circumstances. Right action is to be performed, the test of rightness being its accord with the commands of that voice, and not with any outer scriptural injunctions. It can't be something that you read. It can't be something that is fixed. It has to be in the moment in relation to all aspects of one's life and to the circumstances that one's in. A written instruction could be a guideline, and most moral codes and laws are guidelines, but in the actuality of the moment, one has to be available to the voice that one hears, that is conscience and consciousness from higher levels coming to one, so that one responds in the correct way. There is no other way. So, the disciple must always, again, always listen for that voice, and heard it, and having heard it, must always act in accordance with it. By this means, I can repeat that again, it's always. By this means, the lower self will be purified of its attachment to desire, and will in time become united with the higher. Again, it's putting oneself in alignment, in accord with what is higher. How does one behave? How does one align oneself? Now, we haven't really discussed much in the way of methodology here. We're laying groundwork, and Krishna is explaining the pros and cons of the different systems of the day, the advantages and disadvantages, the limitations of all of the different systems, but also how they play together to become a universal system. We've now come to verses 27 through 30, and this is where we have the first understanding of impartial actions, that can no more bind him than weapons can pierce him, and clinging firmly to this knowledge in his heart, offering his actions to Krishna as the symbol of the great sacrifice, free from the fetters of selfish hope and fear, he engages with the zest in the great battle against evil and sorrow. Evil of his own nature and sorrow of his brothers. That's just an enormous concept for us to take in. It's a twofold, two-pronged action. Is that I have one, the beginnings of a responsibility that I'm grasping for my actions. all of my actions, that understanding that I am not functioning correctly in my daily expenditures of energy. I'm wasteful, I'm consumptive, and I am so self-oriented. I live in a self-centered world, and that is the root nature of the problems that I'm constantly having to deal with. And in addition to that is understanding and dealing with the sorrows of others who, like myself, are also caught up in the most unconscious of activities on a day-to-day basis. Most suffering coming from self-destructive kinds of activities brought upon by my ignorance. And although he's not going to say this in this part, but immediately just a reorientation towards a selfless kind of action. If I'm capable of understanding and doing something in that line, is going to prove enormously valuable, because I'm going to turn from looking down to looking up. Now, it's an orientation change in daily activity. When I live in a world of downward-facing activities where most of the activities of most day are either totally unconscious or at best and self-destructive at worst, self-centered action, to turn and look upwards, I can get a grasp or foothold by considering selfless action oriented away from myself towards both others, which is a good clue that I'm making a positive turn, and or what's higher. And in understanding what's higher is going to take several more rungs up the ladder, but at least I have a wish and a desire. I have a particle inside that is connecting and calling towards that which is higher, and that is what is going to help me orientate myself. So chapter 3 is going to end with the following. Thus understanding him, the Atman, as higher than the buddhi, which is one's higher self, restraining the lower self by the Atman, slay thou, O mighty armed, Arjuna, the enemy in the form of desire, difficult to be overcome. That's not so straightforward, I understand, but it is through the power that we have received by turning and recognizing the higher level of energy that's available that is going to be the force that's going to move us correctly along the path. It isn't sufficient or even realistic that it could be achieved with mental energy. It has to be of a higher level energy. And the reference is, once it says understanding that, then, and that energy is higher than my own highest energy, that I can, in fact, slay the many-armed enemy in the form of desire difficult to be overcome. Basically, the forces that unconsciously hinder my development are going to be loosened and cut by this awareness through the higher level coming in. And that is what's going to be necessary to cultivate. It is not going to be sufficient to just take my weapons of my ordinary mind to achieve this. The importance of another concept, I should end there, but there is one more point that was made in verse 42 and 43, before 43. It said, instead of allowing himself to be guided by likes and dislikes, the disciple must constantly strive. Now the likes and dislikes are going to be played out throughout the book. It's the forces that pull me both directions, and what's being asked for is impartiality. And the description of impartiality again is going to be given again and again, and it's a cornerstone of the teaching, which we'll say more about. The disciple must constantly strive by acting from a sense of duty alone to rise to higher and ever higher level of being. Bound as he is by his nature at any given level, yet is he free with the inherent freedom of the Atman to choose whether he will act from his lower nature or from his higher nature. That basically ends that section. We do have not only a choice, but a responsibility. The responsibility to turn as often as we can in our day towards that what is higher.